Hey Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my preview prediction video for the divisional round playoff game against the Atlanta Falcons. And I've been doing these videos now for a couple years, but this is the first one that I'm doing for a playoff game. I started these videos back at the end of the Chip Kelly era and making them to basically talk about how I wanted them to get rid of them. And now we've finally gotten to the point where the team is good enough to have gotten out of all the problems that he created and become a playoff team again. Of course, we do enter the playoffs not exactly in an ideal situation, having lost Carson Wentz, but we still do have some playoff games to play, and I still think the Eagles can win these games to get to the Super Bowl, but it's going to take some extra effort from some of our other players on the team, which have gotten us here as well. It's not all been Carson Wentz. There's been a lot of other players and a lot of other units on the team that have done well. Specifically, in this case, I think the defense is really going to have to show up. But we'll get to that in a moment. I do want to start to take a look at some of the statistics for this game, and specifically how the Eagles have done in their statistics over the last couple of weeks after the Carson Wentz injury, and specifically looking at where they stand now, where they stood at the end of the regular season versus where they stood right before those last two games when the offense looked so bad. And because of the injury to Wentz, our offensive totals and where we rank in the league probably isn't really representative of where the offense is right now, but I think what's happened over the last couple of games is instructive for how the offense has sort of fallen off. Specifically, the Eagles' overall offense in terms of yardage is now 7th in the league, which is down from 3rd in the league where we had been prior to the Raiders game. In scoring, we've dropped down to 3rd in the league, which doesn't sound that bad, but we had been 1st in the league. Passing is another area where we really dropped off. We were 8th in the league prior to the Raiders game. We've dropped down to 13th. And no surprise, our rushing hasn't dropped quite as much. We were 2nd in the league in rushing offense before the Raiders game. We've only dropped to 3rd in the league. But still, once again, another statistic where we've fallen down after those last couple of games. Finally, another big area where we've had some drop off is in our third down percentage. We were 2nd in the league in completion for third downs. We've now dropped down to 8th in the league in completions for third downs. Now, all of this is in juxtaposed to the defense, because that's where the silver lining is in all of this, is all of these offensive statistics. We have fallen off and where we rank in the league. The defense, it's just the opposite, actually. The defense has really stepped up its game the last couple of weeks, and that's good news for the Eagles, especially as we go into the playoffs. And once again, all of these totals are from after 14 weeks of the season versus where we are after 16 games. So it's the difference between pre-Raiders game and post-regular season. So after the Raiders and Cowboys games. In overall defense, the Eagles have jumped up to 4th in the league in overall defense. We had been 6th in the league. As it relates to scoring, we've also moved up to 4th in the league in defense for scoring, where we had been 8th in the league. So once again, the defense really doing a great job in keeping teams from scoring. In passing defense, the Eagles have moved up from 22nd in the league to 17th in the league. The Eagles obviously couldn't improve in rush defense because they were the top-ranked team in the league as it relates to the run defense, which they still remain the top-ranked team. And the number actually got even a little better, and that's despite the fact that they gave up, a 100-yard rusher for the first time all season to Ezekiel Elliott. So there still even seems to be improving in their rushing defense, despite giving up some yardage to one particular guy. Finally, another real important statistic for defenses is how they're doing on third down, and the Eagles also have improved in that area. They had been 4th in the league, and they've bumped up to 3rd in the league, which is really important because the Falcons come in as the top team on offense in completing third downs at 45%. So the Falcons have been very good and efficient on third down. So the fact that we have improved in that area is going to be really important for this game, because getting off the field for the defense is going to be a big deal. And we've got to make sure that when we get them in third downs that we're able to stop them and get off the field. All of those things said, and how good the defense is playing right now, it's really not a surprise that the Eagles are listed as a home underdog for this game. And if you think about it, if we're a 3-point home underdog as the number 1 seed, first time that's ever happened in NFL history that the top seed is a home underdog in the divisional round of the playoffs, And obviously that has to do with the Carson Wentz injury. Think of it this way. If Carson Wentz were playing in this game, the Eagles would probably be about a touchdown favorite, maybe 6 points. So that basically means that Carson Wentz is a 10-point swing, as the odds makers see it, for where this team is. So instead of being 7-point favorites, they're 3-point underdogs. So it really just goes to show the importance that he has played on this team. I think, though, that sort of led to a little bit of, not a little bit, a lot of disrespect towards Nick Foles. I saw a thing this week where they had ranked the quarterbacks playing in the divisional round of the playoffs 1 to 8. And they had I forget where I read this, but they had Nick Foles listed as the 8th best quarterback in the divisional round. That means they ranked him below Blake Bortles, which I think is just absolutely ridiculous. If you watch the playoff game Blake Bortles played last week, he did not play real well. So it's sort of surprising to me that they would even put Nick Foles below him, given the fact that, yes, Nick Foles did not look good in the Raiders game and for the little bit that he played in the Dallas game. But people, I think, are forgetting that he actually played really well in that Giants game, and he also has had some playoff experience. It's not like he's coming into this without ever having played in a playoff game. He played in the playoff game, and he played decently a couple of years ago when he played in the playoffs against the Saints. The defense ultimately is the one that cost them that game. It wasn't Nick Foles that cost them that game. So I think if you look at all of that, Nick Foles is really being disrespected, and it just goes to show, I think, so many times how often experts just look at what has happened most recently. And when I say most recently, I'm not even talking about this season. I'm talking about the last week or two. I think they're overreacting to what happened with the Falcons last week, going to LA and beating the Rams. And the fact that, Nick Foles has not looked good the last 2 games of the season, I think really made everyone think, oh, well, the Eagles have no shot in this game, forgetting that he did throw 4 touchdown passes against the New York Giants for the 14th game of the season. So, yes, games 15 and 16 were not that great, but week 14 was, and I think they're forgetting that. They're also forgetting the fact that when he came into the game, in the Rams game, the Eagles were losing that game, and he ended up getting them to the point where they could win that game. So there has been a lot of disrespect for Nick Foles, and I hope that he takes that personally and goes out there and tries within himself to play a good game and prove the doubters wrong. I also actually kind of like the fact that we're underdogs in this game, because even some of the stuff you've heard coming out of the team this week, it's clear that they've taken that as a slight, basically saying, hey, the way that the experts are looking at our team is that we were just one guy, and now that he's not there, they don't think we're any good, and sort of taking it as a sign of disrespect. Hopefully that lets them play with a little more emotion, a little extra edge in this game, because in playoff games, emotion and a lot of that kind of stuff do play a role in this. The only thing you got to hope is that they don't overcompensate too much and try and do too much, because lots of times that can become a problem, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where you overreact and you end up making mental mistakes because you're trying to do too much and not just playing the defense as called and making the plays that are in front of you. And like I said, I think that a lot of the experts have really sort of overreacted to the fact that the Falcons beat the Rams out in LA. A couple of things that are very different about that game versus this game. First of all, in that particular game, you're going to Southern California, which is, although it's an outdoor stadium, it's about as close as you're going to get to playing an outdoor game in similar situation of what you would have in Atlanta with the Dome. That is not going to be the case at Lincoln Financial Field. The weather's going to be a lot more raw. It's supposed to get a lot colder as the game goes on. So the fact of playing in the comfort of a dome or the comfort of Southern California is not going to be there for this Falcons team. I'll also take a little bit of a swipe at the LA fans. LA fans aren't anywhere close to what Philadelphia fans are going to be. So the fans are going to be a lot more hostile. They're going to be a lot more rowdy. They're going to be a lot louder. And I think as a result of that, that could also affect the Falcons, especially on the offensive side of the ball. That could then lead to them getting rattled and hopefully making some mistakes on the offense, which leads to another statistic that I want to talk about in this game, and that is turnover differential. If you look at where these teams were at the end of the regular season as it relates to turnover differential, there's a big disparity there in favor of the Eagles. That's because the Eagles were 4th in the league in turnover differential, and the Falcons were 19th. In fact, the Falcons were only one of 4 teams to have a negative turnover differential and a winning record. The only team that had a worse turnover differential than the Falcons that had a winning record was the Tennessee Titans. So if you really want to take a look at what could potentially turn this game, I think that's where it is. We've got to, if we're the ones that are forcing turnovers and our defense is playing solid, I think we win this game, and I think a lot of the people and the experts are going to be surprised by the fact that we could win this game. I think most people just assume that the Falcons are going to win because the Eagles are done. And that really gets to then, how do we win this game? And I think how we win this game is very clear. If you look at last year when we played the Falcons in the regular season, the teams are different. There have been some changes, granted. But Carson Wentz was not playing last year the way he did this year. In fact, you can, in many respects, you could say the way he was playing last year is similar to the way the Foles played this year, sort of up and down and, inconsistent. So if you look at the game last year, the way we won that game when we beat them in the regular season last year was running the ball and keeping the ball on the ground and sort of just keep maintaining, and winning the time of possession as well. And that's another huge thing. The Eagles are number 1 in the league in time of possession. The Falcons are more towards the middle of the league at 18th in the league in time of possession. So the Eagles, if they can control the ball and run the ball, I think that they can win this game. If you look at the Falcons' run defense, their run defense actually looks good in terms of yards per game. They're 9th in the league. But when you look at running yards per play, then it drops down to 16th, and they're sort of much more average as a team. And I think this really goes to show what happened in that Rams game. If you look at the Rams-Falcons game, now I was away on vacation last week, so I didn't get to watch a lot of that. I really ended up watching the fourth quarter, so I didn't really understand what happened in the first 3 quarters. So I went back and looked at some of the play-by-play breakdowns of what happened in that game. And if you look at that game, I think you've got to say that loss is completely on Sean McVay for getting away from Todd Gurley in the running game. And that's because if you look at the run versus pass breakdown in terms of Jared Goff and Todd Gurley, if you're going into that game, you're thinking who's going to win that game for them. Whereas Jared Goff has had a very good season, Todd Gurley is the one that is the MVP candidate on that team. It's not Jared Goff. And what ends up happening, you have Jared Goff has 45 pass attempts. He was also sacked 3 times. So that's at least 48 called pass plays. Then you've got Todd Gurley, who had 14 carries. That's completely out of whack. And I know people are going to say, well, the Rams were behind, so they had to throw the ball. But that, if you look at the play-by-play in the first quarter, when the game was very close, as a matter of fact, it was never more than a 3-0 game at the end of the first quarter is what it was. At the end of the first quarter was 3-0. If you look at the Rams' first 3 possessions in the first quarter, it shows that they completely did abandon the run early in that game. And that's because in the first possession, the Rams have the ball. They run Gurley on first down. He gets 4 yards, then they go pass, punt. On the second possession, he runs the first ball for 8 yards, and then they go pass, punt. So they go 3 and out on their first 2 possessions when they only ran Gurley on first down. They never tried him again on second down. You go to their third possession now, it is 3-0, and Gurley runs on first down when it's a 1st and 5 because of a penalty against the Falcons. So it's 1st and 5. He runs for 5 yards, so he gets the first down. Then the Rams go pass, punt. So they end up going completely to the pass game after running Gurley only once in those opening possessions. Gurley was the first play in each of those, gained significant yards, 4, 8, and 5 yards. Those are decent runs. It's not like they were bottling them up and they weren't getting anything, so that they were in 2nd and long. They were in 2nd and manageables in all of those situations. There's no reason in any of those situations that they should not have tried to run the ball again on 2nd down at least once. In fact, if you look at the statistics at the end of the game for what Gurley did, he averaged over 7 yards a carry. Now, he did have one long one for 33 yards, but if you take that one out of it, his average is still just over 5 yards a carry, which are good numbers. And there's no reason that they should have been moving away from that. The other thing that was sort of bizarre is I looked through the whole game, the play-by-play breakdown that they've got if you download the game book off the NFL website. You can download and look at they have all the plays charted out, and you can look at exactly what happened. And there was only 3 times that the Rams ran Gurley on consecutive plays, where they ran him on one play and they ran him again on the next play. And the third time that they did it was actually 3 consecutive plays. But in the first two of those times, those were Gurley's longest runs, is the second time he ran the ball. His longest runs were 33 and 26 yards, and both of them were immediately after he had run the ball on the prior down. So to tell me that the Rams didn't, that they were just, that Gurley was getting stopped, no. The Rams never tried to establish the run against the Falcons. And this gets back to the statistic I was talking about then with the Falcons as it relates to their run defense. Their run defense, like I said, is decent. It's ranked 9th in the league. But their run, once again, their run per play, their rushing yards per play drops down to 16th. This was shown in this game against the Rams. It was really just absolutely demonstrated completely. That's because the Falcons actually outgained the Rams on the ground. And that's despite the fact that the Rams were outgaining the Falcons by over 2 times per play. So their rushing yards per play was over 2 times as many as it was for the Falcons in terms of yards per play. So there's the blueprint for the Eagles. The Eagles really need to rely on the running game. That's how we beat them last year. That's how we can beat them again this year, is we've got to rely on the running game. The statistic that I know a lot of people are talking about is 25 yards in a game. When the Eagles have rushed for over 25 yards in a game, I think it's 11-1. And when the Falcons have had the opponent run over 25 times in a game this year, they're 0-6. So a lot of that has to do with the fact of the way games play out, because when teams have a lead, they run to run the clock out. So that makes that running number go up. But I still think it is instructive for how you can beat this team. This team does have a good offense. The best way to beat a good offense is keep them off the field. And if your offense can move the ball and chew up a lot of clock by running the ball, then I think the Eagles are able to control that time of possession, keep Matt Ryan and his playmakers on the sideline. That's how we can win this game. The other interesting thing that I think a lot of the experts are forgetting about this, that goes into all of this, is when you look at the two lines, the offensive and defensive lines for the Eagles, they are two of the best units in the NFL in their respective areas. And that's how you win a game like this. You win it in the trenches. And we're going to have to just absolutely go behind guys like Lane Johnson and Barrett Brooks and just pound the right side of our line and run the ball that way. And on defense, we're going to have to get a lot of penetration from our defensive line. And that's the way you win a game like this. And I think the Eagles are actually built to win a game like this. So when the experts are looking at all the playmakers, I think they're forgetting about the fundamentals of football, and that is games generally are won in the trenches. So with all that, I actually am going to predict that the Eagles will win this game. I think that Doug Peterson has shown in the past that he will commit to the run when he has to. I think that's one area where he is a little different than Andy Reid. There have been times where he's gotten pass happy, but he has shown that in games, if he goes in with the mental commitment to stay committed to the run, he will do it. And I think the Eagles can do that. It's going to have to, if we are going to win a game, it's going to have to be a little bit lower scoring, and it's going to have to be one where our defense really keeps us in the game, but I think the Eagles can do that. My prediction for a score is going to be Eagles 23, Falcons 17. Let me know in the comments below what your prediction is. Have you abandoned all hope, and are you with the experts who basically say that the Eagles have no shot at winning this? Do you think our defense can step up and really play with a lot of emotion and win this game for us? Do you think that Nick Foles is better than he's been playing the last couple of weeks, or is he more like he was against the Raiders? So is he more like the Raiders game or more like the Giants game? Which do you think? Leave your comments below. Obviously, I'll check in and give you my thoughts after the game and let you know sort of what I'm thinking. Hopefully, we'll be talking about a conference championship game matchup with either the Vikings or Saints. But until then, fly Eagles fly.